Good evening and welcome to the Arsenal Cider House Pitt Preview Show. My name's Jason, I'll be your host. And my co-host today, as normal, Zach Kaminsky, will be next to me all evening as we talk Pitt football. We talk about the game that took place last weekend. We talk about the preview of this upcoming week and a lot of stuff in between. First off, we want to thank our great hosts, the Arsenal Cider House down here in South Hills. Once again, it is it's the Autumn Fest at Trax Farm, so this place is jumping. When I first walked in to set up, we didn't even have a table available. It was quite good. Once again, on tap, they have the same stuff on tap as last week. You got your Picket Bone Dry, your Fighting Elk, your Pete's Pizzazz. You also got the Concord Grape, which we are sporting again this week. It is fantastic. We polished off an entire bottle last week. I have a feeling we may do the same this week. But once again, we want to thank them for everything they provided to us, the location and whatnot. So let's climb into last week's game, Zach. You were there. I was in the press box. I can tell you what we both predicted, and I can also tell you what happened. So somewhere in between, there was a disconnect. So tell me what you saw last week. Tell me a little
Jason,
bit.
first off, I'm glad to be back for another episode of the Pitt Preview Show. Pulling in, Trax Farm is really busy tonight. Arsenal Cider House is very packed to the brim here, so that's good to see. I also thought maybe we should have done the show from the hay rides outside. I thought that would have been a traveling Pitt Preview show.
We could have been the traveling Wilburys for a game.
We could have done that. We could have done that. Obviously, real disappointing. Both predictions were way off. Looking back on it, thought we had a chance. Don't really know what we had expected and what we had thought would happen. But obviously, we were way off in those predictions. But as I always am, very optimistic every week as we go on with this Pitt season. I always think that they do have a chance. And last Saturday was a little bit of a, I don't want to say a wake-up call.
It was an eye-opener for sure.
But it was an eye-opener and something that I did not expect. Right out the gates, I thought that Pitt did make a mistake on the coin toss. That's where I immediately thought that this game was not going to go well with deferring to the second half. I don't know if Narduzzi thought that he might be in a hole, might be down 14, 21 points, and thought that he would need the ball there. Just thought that it was kind of a mistake giving them the ball right off the bat.
I agree.
Basically spotting them 7 points to start the game. And I think that after reviewing it, I guess my biggest question is I don't know what this team is going forward. It seems to be a lot of question marks in a lot of different areas, and I'm sure we will get into that here on this episode of the Pitt Preview Show. But I don't know, man. I'm sitting here scratching my head as I'm drinking the Concord Grape here and trying to find an answer for this team. I'm not down on them by any means. I'm still looking as we look forward to this opening the conference schedule. Everything that Pitt wants to accomplish is obviously in front of them. But I thought we would have a clearer picture of what we had in front of us. But I believe we don't know much of anything to this point.
There's a lot of cloud. There's some cloudiness, and there's no doubt about that. And I think it has a lot to do with, when I went to the press conference this week and I sat in and I listened to Coach Narduzzi. And if you ever get a chance to sit and listen to him in person, I will tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, he is the most positive human in the world. And I wanted to run through a wall for him because that's the kind of motivator he is. With all that said, he absolutely, he's going to be like any coach in a situation where your team is manhandled like they were. He's going to say, I reviewed the tape and it wasn't as bad as I thought. Yeah, we got beat, but I reviewed the tape and it wasn't that terrible. And he pointed to youth being a big culprit, and I buy that. I do buy that. I wrote it this week on the site. I buy it because with so much youth in the secondary, other than Maddox, back there, that's your main starter back in that secondary. And we're talking secondary because they were torched early and often. And it was coverage situations. The linebacker was out of position because the safety went and did what he was supposed to. The linebacker wasn't sure where he was supposed to go, or the safety was where he needed to be, and the linebacker wasn't sure where he was supposed to be. So there were issues back there, which left Avonte Maddox and his partner in crime on the other side, one-on-one situations with guys they have no business being one-on-one with. Essentially, they also double-teamed Washington. We didn't hear his name all day, but his cohort we heard all afternoon, and a guy I heard very little of before we walked into the game. So the fact is, there's some youth issues out there for sure.
There's definitely some youth issues. I mean, looking back at it, I think that Pitt was just going into it. Obviously, you want to be optimistic, thinking that Pitt can knock off a number 9 team in the nation at home. When it comes down to it, though, was this a total mismatch? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Pitt defense was overmatched. Like you pointed out, they are very, very young out there. We didn't hear Washington much of all. I actually wondered at halftime what his stats were to that point. I don't know what it was at the end of the game, but early on, I mean, you're not gonna. It was basically a matchup of very experienced against inexperienced.
Correct.
Very, 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 very noticeable that I think Oklahoma State had 3 or 4 receivers that ended up having over 100 yards.
Yep.
When you have that, I would believe that you're going to win a game every time. They did a great job on Washington. Don't think this secondary played obviously very well at all. I think the corners were okay in shutting down their receivers, but the safeties just totally out of position, and that becomes a point of youth. Bryson Gardner had a great game against Youngstown State. Obviously, a great game, decent game against Penn State. What was exposed against Oklahoma State. Dennis Briggs, nowhere to be found. Hamlin ended up coming in the game in the second half. I think he did a decent job, but it was a little bit too late at that point to start anything in a positive direction. But they were overmatched.
Right.
And again, going back to the drawing board, I think that we just don't know what this team is. They don't have any sort of identity to this point. You would think that through 3 games you would have some sort of an identity. The defense, last year they were known for stopping the run. Something that we're going to have to touch on this week with the Georgia Tech triple option, and kind of wondering how are they going to stop this. Narduzzi has stopped them the last 2 years, and obviously they've beaten them on back-to-back wins against them. But that was their identity last year, stopping the run. Couldn't stop the pass. But again, this year, we don't know what they are capable of. Are they capable of stopping the run? Are they improving in the pass game? The offense, we have no identity there. What are we trying to accomplish? I mean, we have receivers that can't catch the ball. We have tight ends that are non-existent. We have running backs galore, and we have no idea who is our starter there and who is going to help us from week to week. And we're in week 4, and we have a question that should have been determined in camp, and we don't even know who our quarterback is going forward.
Yeah, that seems to be, and I'm glad you alluded to that. Before we get to that, you mentioned the running backs. I'm glad you brought that up. Please note, I'm a huge fan of what Narduzzi brings to the table, and I like the fact that he loves his players, he stands for his players, and he does. As a player, he's everything you'd want him to be. With all of that said, he is fairly strong-minded. I'd call him pig-headed, but they just don't commit to anything. They really don't commit to one solid guy in the backfield. It's by committee. Quadri Olson probably could have. They never got a chance to stick to him last week. They never got a chance. They kept running him left side, stopped him 2 or 3 times in a row. or they'd throw a 50-yard pass on first down, which left them in a drop ball or overthrown or whatever, which left them second and long. You can't run at that point. You're down 7. You're going to turn the ball over right away. They need to, in my opinion, and I know they're trying to give everybody playing time, and they need to spell Olsen on occasion. The fact is, though, he needs to be your horse. He needs to be the guy who carries the rock most of the time.
Well, and I don't know if it's something that has to be where it's you go with the hot hand. I mean, I'm pro for that, and I agree with that. I also think that maybe some backs do better, or are a better choice against certain defenses. That might be it too. What we had said last week going into the game, I thought that to win the game they had to control the clock. They couldn't fall behind, but if they did fall behind a touchdown, 2 touchdowns, the game's not over.
Right.
But they still had to control the clock, and I don't really think that they even did that from the get-go.
They didn't do it
I don't think that Olsen had 2 carries until halfway through the second quarter.
Right.
I mean, they came out passing the ball all over the place in short passes, long passes. That's fine if that's your game plan. If you see something in that defense, they're not known to have a great defense.
Right.
But I just don't see where you should have been pounding the ball, and you should have established some sort of a run game and trying to control the clock and keep their offense off the field. Going 3 and out is not going to keep their offense off the field. And we saw what their quarterback is capable of. And I just don't think that was – I think that it was overly aggressive. I think that they should have definitely tried to stick to the run game and trying to just eat clock. That's not going to win you games, but it is.
It's going to keep 59 points off the board on the other side. It's going to keep
59 points, or it's going to help contribute that.
Right.
They're getting the ball, and the other thing is that, like you said about Narduzzi, I'm a huge fan of him. I think that he is a great motivator. I think he's a great coach. But the one thing that kind of irked me this week, I guess you were there at his press conference. The one thing that kind of irked me is the fact that all year, and I still think they had ambitions of winning the ACC, winning the Coastal. I still think that they can do that, but all of a sudden now, because they're 1-2, which I think that a lot of us would have thought that they would be 1-2 at this point,
right?
But they would have been a little bit more competitive in all 3 games,
right?
But my biggest thing is with him, all of a sudden now, he's almost bringing up youth. We didn't hear youth. We knew that this was a young team. We knew that it was a team in transition.
Right.
But all of a sudden now we're hearing the youth card.
Yes.
And one thing that I don't like that. I get what he's trying to say, but to me, you're pinpointing excuses. And now that you're sitting 1-2, it comes across to me as, well, we are young, so this is what I expected, and this might be a down year. I'm not saying it's going to be. I still think that everything they wanted to accomplish is ahead of them, and I still think it's very doable, even though we don't know what this team is. But it just seemed to me it's a cop-out, and I'm not a fan of it.
I don't think the youth. I think the youth he knew was going to be an issue, but I don't truly think that he thought it was going to be the issue that it actually is. And the other issue that they've run into with that youth problem is the offense. The offense has been driven solely over the first few games, pretty much by a senior transfer quarterback that I had all kinds of faith in coming in. All we've heard about is how good his arm was, how big his arm is. He can make every throw. He's a strong blah, 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 And from time to time, you do see it. The problem is the fact that he's immobile in the backfield. He's a sitting target back there. And I think his confidence is a bit shaken because the catches they were making last year, they're not making this year. Weah, he's a big-time wide receiver. He has the potential to be that. So far this year, he has been non-existent. He's not making big plays. He's dropping balls that should be caught. He's dropping balls that he caught last year. They're just missing the big playability. The fact that Kadri Henderson, he made a big play last week, but by the time he did it, they were down 35-0. It was a simple out pass. But it was after the transition from one quarterback to the next, which brings us to our transition.
Well, and I think that what you're saying is you are correct. I mean, I think that Weah has not played anywhere near what he did last year, and I don't think
potential.
No, and it's not his. And yeah, and he hasn't played to his potential, and I don't think that you could pinpoint that on a quarterback, whether it is Nate Peterman, whether it is Max Brown or Ben DiNucci. I don't buy that the quarterback play made him or is not making him be a receiver that he is.
Right.
I mean, maybe last year was a breakout year for him, and maybe he caught lightning in a bottle. I haven't seen anything from him this year that has made me feel like, oh, this is just something that he can get out of, or is something that's going to be sustained. Quadri Henderson, they wanted him to be a second receiver on this team. I haven't seen him run a route farther than 5 yards, except for at Penn State when he clearly had either no idea what route he was running, or he broke it off early, or there was just a miscommunication,
which led to a turnover, and a touchdown. I'm not convinced that he's going to be your answer at receiver. I think they need to kind of put him as a running back. Too many teams are keying on the jet sweep. That we haven't seen him break one of those in 3 games. I think Penn State specifically paid a lot of attention. They got burned on it last year for a couple scores. I think that they need to turn the page on that play. You can keep it. And that's what your offense is. I get it. But you kind of need to do
to
that against
adjust.
80% of the teams out there. But you can't do it against a team that's as fast as Penn State was last week, or as fast as Oklahoma State was this past week.
Right.
I mean, the fact is, that Oklahoma State team is as good as any team I've seen in the country thus far. Now, is that saying that? Am I giving Pitt too much credit there? Maybe. But the fact is, I was talking to a couple of Oklahoma State fans after the game as I was leaving, and I looked at them and I'm like, guys, I've watched a lot of football thus far this year. I haven't seen an offense that prolific yet. Because if you cover Washington, McCleskey, who burned Pitt, McCleskey was open all day long. Now, mind you, I
think he scored 3 times on the same play.
Oh,
the crosser over the middle. I mean, I have it ingrained in my memory now of him catching the ball in the center of the field and him running to the pylon. It's almost like the route was, hey, do a crosser, a 20, 25-yard crosser, catch the ball at the hash, and then just run to the pylon.
Right.
That's exactly what it looked like every time
every
he scored.
Single time.
But I think that, again, taking a step back, though, they are a great offense. I mean, I think that their ambitions are they want to be, and they're not settling for anything less than the top 4, being in the top 4 in the playoff at the end of the season. I don't know many defenses that are going to stop that. I know that they play in that Big 12, and it is run and gun, and they don't have a great defense. Their defense played, I would say, above average. I don't see it as a great defense. They played above average. But also, though, I mean, I'm not trying to sit here and say that Pitt gave the game away, but there's a couple of those plays early on in the game where a couple missed tackles, and that quarterback, Mason Rudolph, having the pocket presence that he did was a real eye-opener. I mean, he could have gotten sacked 4 times. I mean, it was almost like backyard football and exactly what a lot of Steelers fans would want in drafting him. I said this last week, and I will harp on it this week in saying that if I was the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would take a long, hard look at this kid because he reminded me on Saturday of what Ben Roethlisberger did early in his career, of escaping tackles and then throwing it up and creating a play and playing backyard football.
Right.
That's what 2-3 of their touchdowns were resulted from.
Correct.
Broken plays that were thrown up, and all of a sudden you're sitting there thinking, 3rd and 20, okay, we're just going to throw the ball up and score. And early on in the game, when basically, and a huge play I think was when they basically conceded a drive and ended up having a 99-yard drive early in the game when it was 3rd and 11. They handed the ball off, and no Pitt defenders are able to be found.
Right.
And they get a first down. But you know that's leaves us to where we are with this season early on, and I think that just to summarize the Oklahoma State game, just a team that was overmatched, a young team that was overmatched.
I agree with that. Which leads me into this coming as soon as the game ended. You and I had the conversation.
Yep.
You and I had the conversation about the quarterback.
And we're going to have it now.
And we're going to have it now. As soon as the game ended, the coach came out and said, we have a decision to make this week. I go to the press conference on Monday, and he says, we'll find out Saturday morning. You know damn well he knows who it's going to be this week. He's just not telling anybody because he wants to make Paul Johnson plan for whoever it's going to be when he really doesn't have to plan for much. If you're making him plan for it, the fact is the one guy can run and the one guy can't. So, and that defense can run with the best of them. They don't tackle well, but they run with the best of them. So, in my opinion, is this team better off with Ben DiNucci? I'm not at all going to sit here and tell you he's a better overall quarterback. I don't have that kind of knowledge behind me. I didn't see Ben at Pine Richland. I didn't see him throughout training camp. I saw him a couple of times, but I saw him in that game Saturday, and it was out of reach at the moment when he came in, so that also helps. But the fact is, his ability to run helps him with that offensive line, with the youth on that one side of the offensive line. He has better pocket presence than Max Brown does. He doesn't have a better arm. He has no ability to throw the ball more than 30 yards. I'd say 25 or 30 yards with any type of accuracy. But see, I say that knowing we've not seen it. He threw 2 balls of that distance, and one ball, a guy cut his route off short. And the other ball, he didn't have a chance for it. So, but I've also seen Max Brown throw those passes. And it's not like he's hitting every one of them.
No, he's not.
So, and he has no ability to escape in that backfield. He is not a threat to run the ball. And by having a guy who is a threat to run the ball in the backfield allows somebody like Kadri Henderson to become more of a factor in a game plan, which is why I feel like Ben DiNucci is the better option, because it brings Kadri Henderson back into play.
Yeah, I agree with
My
that.
opinion.
I agree with
Same
it.
thing with Nate Peterman, only minus the arm strength.
I agree with it.
That's not blaming Max, though. I'm not sitting here telling you Max stinks, because I don't think he does. I just don't think he's had an opportunity.
Here's my point on it. I'm one-sided in this. I know it's a debate. I think it is definitely a debate for this team going forward. I think you have one quarterback who is new to this team, hasn't been in this system very much. I don't know the system that Southern Cal runs. I don't know what they do. I don't know what their scheme is. I know what our scheme is, but
this is his 4th offensive coordinator.
It's his 4th offensive coordinator. He's a senior. He went to, like we said last week, he went to USC. He wasn't going to play right away. He got used to that system. I have to cut the kid a break to an extent. Here's my point. I had to cut the kid a break to an extent because he has started 6 games in his career.
4 of them against top 10 teams.
4 of those 6 games are early on, not late, early on in a season when everyone hasn't gelled.
Right.
Against top 10 teams. Alabama, Stanford on the road, Penn State on the road, Oklahoma State at home.
Yep.
That's who he's played so far. I don't think that he's been given the chance to get in any sort of rhythm offensively. That's all I've heard, not to talk about the Steelers right now, because I know we're not talking about them, but that's all I've heard all week about how they're not in rhythm. They're not gelling together yet. We're going on to the 3rd game for them, and that's still, they've had 4 preseason games, which everybody was very limited, I understand, and some people weren't there. But they haven't gelled. And we're still waiting to see this greatest show on turf happen. But Max Brown, I feel like, has played against very stiff competition. He's came here, arrived in January, maybe February, to a team that he had never even seen a playbook from. So this has only been his 9th month in this system for this team. Now, I do believe that exactly what you said, you are right. DiNucci gives you an element of the game that Max Brown does not. He is a better runner than him, and also that he's been in this system for now. This is his third year. He's a redshirt sophomore. And that's why I feel like when I watch the games that he does feel comfortable in this offense. He's seen it before and he gets it. Max Brown's not going to give you the mobility that DiNucci does. But that's also something that we knew going in. I don't think that having mobility is going to win you or make you a better quarterback. Obviously, it's going to make you a better quarterback, but that's not going to overall. There's quarterbacks in college football and in the NFL that don't have any mobility. Tom Brady doesn't have any mobility.
Right.
The throw to Jester Wheel last week, yes, he overthrew him for a touchdown. But I would almost overthrow somebody than underthrow. That's, I mean, we can argue that. I mean, that's something. Last week, taking Brown out of the game, he was 7 for 10, 65 yards at the time when they took him out. No interceptions, nothing.
No first downs, though, either.
There's no first downs. But at the same time, though, Narduzzi wanted a spark. They were down, I don't know when they took him out, 14, 21, nothing. They took him out. But he wasn't
35.
But he wasn't the guy that would, I mean, he wasn't playing defense. And I'm not trying to sit here and say he got the short end of the stick, but I do think he did. He didn't do anything in that game to warrant being taken out. Do I think that he was taken out because he wanted a spark? Absolutely.
But did he do something to warrant staying in? And that's the other question.
No, he didn't do enough to warrant. He didn't do enough to warrant staying in. If he throws that touchdown to Weah, if that's a touchdown, does he stay in the game? We don't know that.
Right.
I just feel though that I mean I don't know. I'm torn on this topic because what I really want to say is that I would give him one more game, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's okay every game you're going to say one more. I'm not saying that. I do think the kid came in here with a lot of pressure. DiNucci came in, he tried to make stuff happen, he tried to make plays, and he did. But a lot of that, again, me and you went back and forth on this. If you look at his stats, they do look great. But
they look no better than.
They look no better, but they do look better than Max Brown. His second pass to Quadri Henderson.
It was an out pass.
Let's be honest. It went for 60, 70 yards.
But he threw it 8 yards.
But how much of that was Henderson?
It was all him.
You take away those yards, and I understand we'd be sitting here saying if the same thing went for Max Brown, I get it. But a lot of those were shuffle pass. Again, would be Max Brown. I'm sitting here today looking at this game tomorrow. It's a new season. His confidence may be burnt. His confidence may be done. When I look at the two quarterbacks, I do think that DiNucci is more comfortable in this offense than Max Brown is. But with saying that, if you're going to go with DiNucci or you're going to go with Max Brown, you have two totally different offenses.
Completely different. I agree with that.
You got to figure out, and again, it goes back to what we said, there's no identity on this team. So this can't be we're switching every week, we're rotating every 2 series like they tried to do with Nate Peterman and Voidick. You got to go with one. This week, I'd sit there and say, you give them one more chance.
When you hear a coach say, I got 2 good quarterbacks, that is also known as I don't have one standout guy that I can trust.
But then it comes to question though, and I thought about this on the way over to the show, is if you knew that you were a young team and you weren't going to have any sort of identity, or you're going to sit here and use the card that he used this week that I harped on earlier in saying it's a youth movement, then why did you bring in a guy that was a redshirt senior? Why did you bring him in? Why wouldn't you just, if you're going to go a whole youth movement and you're losing parts, why wouldn't you just say, hey, we're not looking at this guy from Southern California for 1 year. We're going to look at the 3 guys that we have, and we're going to roll with them.
You have to look at who was chasing him at the time, though. That was your previous offensive coordinator, who is no longer with you. He was the guy who had him on his radar initially.
Yeah.
And then when when he left and then transfer came in, now I've got a new offensive coordinator. You see this kid, you see the arm. You saw what he did in high school. You see how good he is in the pot when he has time. When he has time and he has weapons, and you're Coach Narduzzi, and you're sitting there and you're like, I got Weah, I got Henderson. I got Olsen in the backfield. I got Shantez. I got all these weapons. And he does. He does have weapons. But I don't think they're being utilized well at all.
They're not being utilized.
And as well as good as much as I like this offense, as good as it was last year, and I think as good as it could be this year, I don't think the new offensive coordinator has done anybody any favors thus far.
No,
this season.
I think the offensive coordinator hasn't done anyone favors, and I think that he needs to decide what he wants to do. Too many times in these first 3 games, and it's going to be interesting to watch tomorrow. I think that this coordinator has no clue.
Right.
I mean, I don't think that I think that he was brought in here, and I almost feel like he was told, and he's trying to run Matt Canada's offense. I didn't see him at Texas. I didn't see him at any other place that he went. So I don't know what his prior offenses looked like.
Right.
But to me, it's like he's trying to either replicate something that's non-existent and is never going to work here, or I look at Nate Peterman and I look at Max Brown as the same. I look at Ben DiNucci as I look at him more as a Chad Voitek type. Not saying that he is Chad Voitek and he's not going to be good, but I compare the two.
But you know something? I think Nate Peterman has better wheels than Max.
He does.
I mean, he has a better escapability, and I don't think his arm is as good as what Max Brown's is supposed to be.
No, I think Max Brown has a better arm than Nate Peterman.
Right, but I think Nate Peterman is a better overall quarterback.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he is a better
because
overall
he has that
quarterback.
ability. He's got that second.
You have a second
skill
gear.
set.
Yeah, you have a second skill set. You have a second gear.
Right.
Max Brown, I didn't know coming into the season that he was not a
I didn't realize he was a construction cone.
Yeah,
I had no idea that was the case.
But when I look at the two, going back to DiNucci and I look at Max Brown, if I were to choose somebody, I see the flair, I see the confidence that DiNucci has, and I do get it, and he gets it. I don't buy that the team rallies around. Is the team upset that Max Brown came in here and he was basically, I'm not saying given the job, but, who are you? You came from USC, so you think you're just warranted it? I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. But what I do think is when I look at two quarterbacks, I look at a quarterback in Brown, and I look at a typical college running quarterback. I can kind of throw if I want to type quarterback. Seriously, I texted you on Saturday at the game, and I'm the biggest Johnny Manziel fan, and you know this. He looks to me like a poor man's below average Johnny Manziel.
And that's only because Johnny Manziel could throw a country mile.
Yeah, he could. He was a better thrower. He was a faster runner.
Right.
And he was on a better team.
Right, absolutely.
I just, part of me, I sit at these games and I hear all these people yelling for DiNucci, and I'm not against DiNucci, don't get me wrong. But I'm not saying that this is going to the coach's decision. Oh, well, he's a local kid. But a lot of these people who go to the games that are a casual fan are sitting there screaming for the local kid. And I get it. You want to see the local kid over a kid that came in here from California. I get it. But
you know as well as I do, though, the most popular and the most important guy, or the most, on a team that's struggling, the most valuable player is the backup quarterback.
Yeah, on a team that is driving through mud, quicksand, and can't get out of it. Obviously, you're not going to win if you don't have a quarterback.
Right.
Right now, Narduzzi says we have two good quarterbacks. We don't have a great quarterback. I think that they're both kind of at this point. We haven't seen enough from either one of them to say, okay, you are the guy.
Right.
I think that, like you said, I think you're right. I think that it's...
in the first 4 games that I saw Nate Peterman, I never looked at him and said, yep, he's the...
Nope.
I never saw what I saw in him at the end of his career as what I saw. The first 4 or 5 games, he was
What I do wish, I wish that Max Brown was a junior.
Me too.
I wish that he was a junior. You could sit here and this would be growing pains.
Right.
He would grow. He would get better. At the end of this year would go how it is.
Yep.
And it would be another Nate Peterman. But at some point, though, this goes to another topic that we're not going to talk about today. But this goes to another point. Pitt can't sit here and keep relying on grad transfers.
But see, that's where I was going next. So we also talked about how you don't think, and we both said we're not saying that DiNucci is or is not the future. Nobody's saying either way, but the fact is, he's a sophomore. I almost root for that
for stability.
For stability's sake. You know, I was never a fan of. It was right there and it escaped me. The quarterback.
Tino Cinceri.
Yes, I was never a fan of Cinceri.
You're not the only one. I think the whole city of Pittsburgh and every Pitt Panther fan.
I like the family. Don't get me wrong. But I was never a fan of him as a football player.
You just like Cinceri's down in the strip, don't you?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Those atomic pepperoni rolls are amazing. The problem is there was no atomic in Tino Cinceri's arm. And,
there was not. There was no height there either.
There was none. And if you wanted to pass 20 yards, you couldn't get it. The difference between him, though, and like what I saw from DiNucci thus far, Tino Cinceri didn't run as well. He ran, but he didn't run as well. Honestly, I don't think that we have one of these run-pass option guys. Okay, I'm not saying that with him. But DiNucci is fast. In comparison to what we've seen in the last couple of years, he's a fast quarterback for us.
He's fast. He's a very mobile kid.
He's a mobile
and
kid
I think
with a little bit of an arm.
With a little bit of an arm. But my biggest worry going forward with this team, if he's the quarterback, and listen, if he is chosen tomorrow at 12:20 to be the quarterback, I'm going to be behind him. But
Jester Weah better be determined to not run past 25 yards off the line of scrimmage.
I just think that you're going to see guys, if he's going to succeed, they're going to have to change the offense. They're going to have more of a running game that's present. And also a guy like Raw Lopes is going to play a bigger part. Because like DiNucci said, they have a connection. I don't think that DiNucci and Weah have any sort of connection. I don't think that Aaron Matthews and DiNucci have any sort of...
Though he did catch more passes this week than he has in the previous.
He did, but he's still non-existent in the offense, which I'm a homer. I'm a whippy old guy, like you would say. Okay,
I want to see Ariel.
Yeah, you want to see all these...
Aaron Matthews.
I do want to see him. But I think that this offense is going to change. And again, though, that I think that this team is not... Maybe for this year, they'd be fine if DiNucci can win. But again... Going into next year, I don't think that he's the quarterback of this team. I mean, I don't see him being a quarterback for the next 3 years. I think that the kid, there's two kids waiting in the wings. McVitie apparently, I was waiting. This is what I was really waiting for. In the fourth quarter at that game, why is he not in the game?
Because he burns a red shirt.
But he redshirted last year.
Oh, then
he was a freshman last year. He redshirted. So now he's a redshirt freshman. Why is he not in the game?
Right.
I don't get that.
Right.
You don't want to put Kenny Pickett into the game? Fine. I get it. He's a freshman. You're going to redshirt him. Apparently, from what I've heard, is that Kenny Pickett is better than McVitie. And actually, in practice, they have said that Kenny Pickett is the best out of the four. Okay.
He's the best out of the four.
Maybe he is the answer down the road. You obviously don't want to burn him this year. Fine. But Thomas McVitie, he looks like a quarterback. Throw him in there in the fourth quarter.
Let's see what he can do.
I mean, for God's sakes.
I am in total
agreement. For God's sakes. You know, I'm sitting there saying to my brother-in-law, why is this kid not in the game? And I said the exact same as you. Oh, maybe he's redshirt. You can't redshirt him every year.
Right.
So put him in the game. See what he has. The game's out of reach. Put him against a team that is the number 9 team in the nation. Put him in. And, you know, keeping Paul Johnson on the ropes, the guy's preparing for both teams. I get it. We might see them, you know, Narduzzi said we might see tomorrow, hey, whoever starts, if it ain't happening, next guy's going in. Okay, fine. But
Paul Johnson's not...
I'd like to see who this is.
Paul Johnson is not fretting over either one of these guys. And you know that as well as I do.
No, and I wouldn't either if I was a coach.
Because his deal is about his offense and about how many points he can put up on the board with that you know, pass option veer craziness that they run. So he's not worried about it either way. So
So you're going with DiNucci, and I'm going
I
with
honestly believe they're going to start DiNucci, but I would not be surprised to see the other kid run out. I wouldn't be surprised. But in my mind, on the road, if they run the other kid out, if they run, my worry is this: you send Max Brown out, and you go a series or two, and he's not done anything yet. They haven't completed a pass or whatever. Those struggles kick in. All the failure that he's felt for the past several seasons, if you don't think it's in there now, it'll be there by that.
Well, and I agree with that, but I guess I'm looking at it from this standpoint that what I would do if I were the coach, I put Max Brown in. I don't think that this team has helped him in any way. From drops here, we'll start from the beginning. From a vanilla playbook.
Terrible in that first game.
To drop passes and running wrong routes hasn't helped. And him not being as productive as he could against Oklahoma State.
Right.
So what I would do is I'd play him. I think the better route is to play him. If he doesn't produce, then he's done. Right. He's really, really, really done at that point. I don't see if you start DiNucci and DiNucci, they're down 14, 21 points, and you put Max Brown in, does it light a little bit of fire under his ass? Sure. But now DiNucci's done.
Right.
So you really got a problem.
Right.
And then if Max Brown doesn't produce, that's why I'm kind of going with the Max Brown route. I think that if you play him to start the game, you're saying, hey, man, you're a senior. This is your team. You're a captain of this team. Take the ship, run it. If it doesn't work, then you know it's done. And then at that point, then it's really DiNucci. But again, I understand that if you go Max Brown, I think if it was chosen as Max Brown to start the game, I think DiNucci would be more understanding. And then he would come in relief, and then he could sit there and say, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
Max Brown comes in, it just, I don't know. We will see tomorrow at 12:20.
Yeah, we will. It'll be a fun watch.
I'm rooting for both guys to do well.
And please note that as listeners and whatnot, nobody's pulling for one guy to. If Max Brown comes out tomorrow and lights it up, great. That's what you want. That's what you wanted in game one. But I think the Pitt offensive coordinator and head coach got a little too cute this year and dialed things back too far in that first game. I think they needed more time. They needed more real live action play.
Yeah. And I would come out, and if Max Brown is the quarterback, I'd come out, and you got to run the ball.
You got to run the ball.
I mean, if Quadri Henderson is your back this week, I mean, that's the other thing. We stayed on this before about this rotation at running back. Now all of a sudden, Shantez Moss is co-starter with Olsen. I've said this since Olsen got here. I think that I love the kid. I think he's a great runner when his mind is on it. Something tells me that his mind is just not in football. And that's why when you have a guy like Shantez Moss, he's a football guy, and that's why they want to go to him. And Quadri Henderson, Olsen, I just think that they're kind of at their wits' end. I mean, it's like we give you the ball, and it's like either you're in this or you're not. They need to come out. If he's the starter tomorrow, he needs to come out, and they need to give him the ball to start the game. I mean, and the other thing is, as we're going to go with Georgia Tech, you're only going to get so many possessions here.
Right.
I mean, you're only going to get so many.
Right. Right. Because they're gonna consume the. I mean, and that leads you right into, we can jump into the preview. Before I do that, touch on something else that was brought up in this week's
famous topic. Let me guess.
Oh my God.
Let me guess.
I don't even want to go here. And
attendance.
Yes, it's going to be attendance. And the reason I'm going to touch on this, first off, I am not a proponent of the subject at all. I don't think it matters. I don't care that 35,000 people go to Pitt games. I don't care that 65,000 don't go to Pitt games. It doesn't matter to me. The fact is, when they win, 55,000 fans, 50,000 fans show up. That's the best you can hope for. That's all you're going to get. That's what you're going to get. But the fact is, whenever you got beat by Penn State by 19 the week before, you showed absolutely nothing in game one. If they had blown out Youngstown State, it'd have been a different story, I think. But you snuck past Youngstown State. I mean, you snuck past them. And then you go into Penn State, you show nothing offensively. Then you come back home in front of the number 9 team in the country, and you're sitting in front of 35,000 fans. Well, guess what? That's what comes out the games. When they won a national championship in '76, and you and I have talked about this back in the day when they only sold out 3 games that year, 2 games, and Penn State was one of them. This is not a team that sells out the stadiums. They never have, and they never will. I mean, maybe back in the Pop Warner days, or Jock Sutherland, and if you want to go back to the 20s and the 30s and the team, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in real time, real day, since the resurgence happened, the initial resurgence happened with Walt Harris, and I say resurgence, and it was brief, but when that initially happened, and you had Rod Rutherford running the football and throwing the football for him at quarterback, I remember a Thursday night game against Virginia Tech. There was almost 60,000 fans at the game. It was unbelievable. I remember game day came to that game, or game day came to a game that year. I mean, it was great.
Wasn't that awesome?
It was amazing. But you know something? They didn't sell out.
No.
They never.
Michael Vick was there.
Right. They didn't sell out, and they're not gonna.
They're not going to. They're gonna sell out when they get the marquee opponents.
Right. And no stadium on campus is going to fix that either. So the fans out there that are screaming for that, go drive around campus and tell me how much ground is available for that. Because 1, you need room for it, and 2, you need room for parking. You don't have either one, so keep dreaming.
Yeah, I mean, I think the attendance issue is what it is. And, you know, one other thing that irritates me is when we start talking about start times of games. I've never met a fan base that worries so much about logos, attendance, and start times of games more than this fan base.
Oh.
My biggest thing with the attendance is, I want to say it is what it is. There's obviously room for improvement. The biggest thing with it is you got to get winning cures all. Once you're winning,
play for something.
Once you're winning, it does. If they would have beat Youngstown State handily, they go to Penn State, they beat them on the road, I'm sure that you would have had a little bit of a spike against Oklahoma State.
Right.
I thought going into the game, it was going to be no Penn State game the year before, but I did think that it was going to be, we would see a visible spike in attendance. When I got there Saturday, I did notice, wow, this didn't do anything for us. But then it brings a point up. If you're going to schedule non-conference games, you need to schedule against a brand. You need to schedule it against a team that is going to bring fans here. You're scheduling Oklahoma State. To me and you as a football fan, Oklahoma State sounds great. Number 9 teacher. Do you think the casual fan knows a lick about Oklahoma State?
Not even a little.
No, they don't know anything about it. And I understand these games are scheduled way in advance, but if you're going to play a team from the Big 12, try to get West Virginia on the schedule.
Yep.
And we've seen it in the past where they schedule non-conference games against Notre Dame. They played Notre Dame at home a few years ago. They played them again when I think Tyler Boyd was a freshman at home on a Saturday night.
They can't play them though right now.
Yeah, and it was but then now because they're in their rotation of the ACC. But before, it was a Saturday night game. Pitt was average. Notre Dame was in the top 20. They played them at home on a Saturday night. It created a buzz. Pitt needs to sit there and take a step back and sit there and think, okay, if we're going to schedule believe me, I don't want to see Pitt play 2 non-conference games, 3 non-conference games at home, and play Youngstown State, Rice next week, and not play any named teams. I've almost sat there and talking to people and thought, maybe what they do need to do is home and home with either West Virginia or Penn State going forward. That gives you the 1 game at home. Then maybe you need to do 2 games on the road and 1 game at home against a bigger name. If that means it's a Michigan, a Notre Dame, Michigan State, an Ohio State, a Maryland, something like that. That's who they should be playing here at Heinz Field. You want to get someone like Maryland in here? Fine. You're going to get people from Maryland here. You're going to get some sort of an increase in attendance. People from Oklahoma State aren't coming here.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with that.
I mean, to be honest,
they need regional rivals.
And people sit here and the Penn State fans start this argument with us about attendance. Listen, we are what we are. And you didn't have 109,000 in there last week. Half your student section wasn't there against Georgia State. You want to say you had 102,000? You didn't.
No.
Okay.
You may
I
have
sent
sold
you the
many.
photos. I knew someone that was there. I told them to send me pictures. There wasn't that there. Okay. You got to remember, but within the 300 miles. Okay. Put this into perspective for a second. Okay. This is the major universities that you have here playing in the not Pittsburgh region, but within Pittsburgh distance. Okay. You got Pitt, Penn State, Maryland, Michigan, Ohio State, Temple if you want to throw them in there, Cincinnati if you want to throw them in there. Michigan State's not far away.
Right.
I mean, you got almost 9 teams that aren't that far away within a 300-mile radius of Pittsburgh. West Virginia, we didn't name them.
Yep.
I mean, you got a lot of teams that are right here.
Right.
And Pitt doesn't have the alumni base to get these people on a routine basis. And you're also fighting. It's a pro town. It is what it is. It's a pro town. You're not going to get these people. And there's only so many people within 300 miles. I mean, 300 miles. And think about that. You have these major universities. That's a lot of schools. 9 of them, I mean, unless I'm missing some. But you got 9 within 300 miles that you could drive to. I mean, those are all driving distance away. Yep. And I'm not saying that Pitt's going to play in Ohio State at home.
And after the last time we played them, I don't know if you want to, but
you got Navy. I mean, Navy is another D1 program that, they're not attracting. They're not going to be a huge draw. We've played them in the past, but it is what it is.
But I like the Navy. I like playing Navy, though. That's not a terrible game to play.
Well, it's funny because my brother-in-law texted me this morning, actually, and was talking about how he was watching the South Florida game last night, and crowd wasn't great. They're a ranked team, and, he said maybe Pitt is better suited in the American Athletic Conference, and I don't want to go that far. Me and him had the argument. I think that they might be better suited from a talent standpoint. Would they be up in the upper echelon of teams? Them in West Virginia if you got them there. But again, as a season ticket holder, as a fan of Pitt football, I'm not going. I don't want to be going to games against Tulsa, Temple, Southern Methodist, Navy,
and that's not a good plan going forward, anyways. Especially with the TV network coming in.
It's not for me.
No, right.
No draw there.
None. And it doesn't matter. To be honest, even though they're all within 300 miles, that's great. Whenever Pitt sells out, they sell out because West Virginia's here, Penn State's here, and Notre Dame's here. Those are the 3 teams that people come to play and come to see.
Well, and Pitt fans need to realize, and the general football fan needs to realize, that Pitt can't play Penn State, West Virginia, Notre Dame every year.
That's right.
And the argument, at home too. And the argument then becomes, that I've heard recently, is, okay, Kansas State, they're ranked. They went the route where they're playing a bunch of fluff.
Yep.
Would you rather see fluff and be 3-0 right now, or would you rather play home? I'm sorry, Pitt's 1-2. I don't want them to be 1-2 right now, but I would rather see 2 top 10 teams and 2 brand name, well-known teams come in here. Because those games, a loss against Penn State and a loss against Oklahoma State,
at the end of the day,
are going to make your team better.
Right.
They saw the best of the best.
Well, not just better, but you don't know what you get after 3 games if you play.
They faced the number 4 team, and they faced the number 6 team in the nation so far.
Yep.
Who else can say that?
Right.
No one.
Fresno
State has played, I believe, Alabama, and they played Washington. But
and if you throw in the fact that they've got to now travel to Georgia Tech, you look at those first 4 games, there's not too many teams that have played a more difficult first 4 games.
No.
I mean, so even playing Youngstown State, at least they were in a championship game last year, and it matters. It matters. Moving forward to this week, we'll get into the Georgia Tech team. We talked about Paul Johnson. We talked about his offense a little bit. We know what you're going to get with that. That's the veer. That's the That's the option pass and triple option deal where Taquan Marshall's going to do everything. Last week they had a bye week, but it was unexpected because the game got rained out. Didn't get rained out; it got hurricaned out, I guess you would call it. Through 2 games, though, he's accounted for 9 touchdowns. He's got more running yards than he's got passing yards, which is very atypical for a Paul Johnson team. He can throw a little bit, there's no doubt. But the one thing, he's not a big downfield thrower, which helps the Panthers out. They can keep things within about 15 or 20 yards, and I think overall that helps them. The defense, though, on the other side, I mean, they gave up 41 points or 42 points to Tennessee, to a Tennessee team that lost last week in embarrassing fashion. I'm sorry. How you don't have somebody playing center field on the last play of the game? Please explain that to me. That's another.
Tennessee is a team that's very, very, very similar to
Butch,
Pitt.
whatever his name is.
Pitt always has, and Tennessee always has high expectations.
Right.
They always hover around. The only real difference is that they get people to go to the games.
Yes.
And we don't.
Yes. Well, they're in a city that has nothing else but.
And that would be a good opponent, not to interrupt you, but that would be a good opponent.
I totally agree.
And I do think that they play in 2019, 2020. I do think that, and you know what? I don't know the year, don't quote me, but they do play in back-to-back weeks at home. They play Tennessee and West Virginia back-to-back.
Wow.
So it's going to be a similar Penn State.
Yep.
Oklahoma State.
Absolutely.
But it's similar.
But I like the Tennessee deal. And if they go back-to-back, I pledge that you and I need to go to Knoxville.
That would be a fun place to go.
If I get a chance to visit someplace, because Lynchburg's not far. And 2 weeks later, we'll stumble back home. So you know what you're going to get with the offense. The defense is so-so. We don't know what we're going to get from our quarterback because we don't know who it's going to be. You know it's probably going to be both of them.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's probably going to be both of them. At some point, they're going to both play. Even when Nate Peterman first started, there was 2 quarterbacks playing at one time. It was him and Wojtek. And I truly believe Wojtek got the short end of that stick, even though at the end, Peterman was the better choice. But that first year that they were 2 battling it out, I thought Wojtek was the better player. My opinion. I don't know, you know what I mean? I'm not a scout. I'm not. But from what they played, I thought he was the better.
Well, here's a little bit
what are you seeing for this week?
Here's a little bit about Georgia Tech, just so people can understand and get a better grasp of what we're running ourselves into. They're 1-1, beat Tennessee, or lost to Tennessee 42-41 in their first game, in double overtime, beat Jacksonville State convincingly 37-10 at home. Obviously, like you said, they were supposed to play Central Florida last week. That game was canceled. So they've had about 13 days to prepare for the Pitt Panthers. They are 1-1.
That's either a good thing or a bad thing, by the way.
Yeah, their basic offense is, like you said, the spread option, and their basic defense is multiple different sets that the Pitt Panthers will see. The last 2 times that Pitt's played, they've come down to the end. Down to the wire. Pitt winning the 2015 matchup on a 56-yard field goal with 1:11 to go. Do remember that? Chris Blewett nailed that. And last season's contest ended as the buzzer went off on a 31-yard field goal. The series record, Pittsburgh leads 7-4. At Georgia Tech, Pitt leads 3-1 in the series. And at Pittsburgh, Pitt leads 4-1 in the series. Last meeting, like I said, Pitt won 37-34. You got a guy and a quarterback that is new to their offense, Taquan Marshall, like you had mentioned. He's accounted for 9 touchdowns, 3 passing, 6 rushing in just 2 games.
He's run first.
He's a run first, but, Pitt's seen this story so many times. And you know what? I'm impressed. Narduzzi approaches this year in, year out throughout the entire season. This isn't something that he just prepares for the week prior.
No, he gets 10 or 15 minutes of this every
10 to
game.
15 minutes each
every
practice. They start this in the fall. They start this in the spring ball. and they're ready to go.
Right.
Actually, Paris Ford, freshman that we hope to have high expectations, has been running the scout team quarterback as Taquan Marshall throughout the week. So, obviously Pitt is seeing an athlete coming in there. Taquan Marshall ran all over Tennessee.
Maybe he's available for this week.
That's something that is, you know what though? It's not out of the question. I mean, Narduzzi says he's redshirted. Who knows? No one knows that. I think that was just, to kind of give the kids some comfort and say, you don't have high expectations right off the bat. But he is a junior, leads the nation in scoring, and ranks second nationally in points, responsible for 27.0 points per game. They don't pass much. He's 10 for 16 for 232 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2 games. That's not just one. Max Brown is 43 for 66, 2 interceptions, 338 yards, 1 touchdown.
In 2.5 games.
Taquan Marshall is their leading rusher, and this is something for Pitt to look forward to. 57 attempts in 2 games, Jason.
Yep.
274 yards, 4.8 average, 6 rushing touchdowns. Like I said, their leading receiver, here's a stat: 4 catches, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns.
So we're going to single cover all day long.
But the key to this is that Pitt needs to make sure that they capitalize on every possession.
Correct.
They can't have wasted possessions in this game. I don't know. I'd have to look back in the box score how many possessions that Tennessee did have during that game. But I do remember watching that on. It was a Monday night. I do remember watching that game, and they have 7-8 minute possessions where they're chewing the clock, and it's run.
Right.
And here's the key: Pitt is going to know that they're going to run.
Yep.
And they know they're coming at you, and they know that they're going to chew up clock. You know that the run is coming. You have to stop it. The defensive line should be licking their chops this week, sitting there saying, now this is an opportunity for you to make plays. This is an opportunity for them to make plays, not the secondary. And one thing that we haven't even talked about really is that we don't know what Jordan Whitehead, it has seemed like forever since this kid has played.
You don't know what he's got.
He hasn't played. You only look at this season. He hasn't played in the first 3 games. But keep in mind that he hasn't played since the Clemson game of last year when he broke his, I believe it is forearm, when he shattered his forearm in half. He hasn't played since that game.
Right.
He didn't play the final 2 games, and he didn't play in the bowl game against who was it last year? The bowl game. I'm drawing a blank right now. We're both drawing a blank.
Yes.
But he didn't play.
Right. Oh, no, he didn't
Northwestern
play.
in the pinstripe.
Right.
He didn't play in that game.
Right.
I think that he's going to add an element. They would be stupid to not use him in some sort of fashion on offense. I think that he's going to...
Well, he did last year.
Yeah, I think that he's going to add an element of surprise. Everyone knows that you might see him, but you don't know when. I think that, that's something that Pitt has always used to their advantage of his ability to be an athletic player.
That's a great point because that's something else we've missed this year.
Especially with an injured Quadri Henderson.
Right. Yeah, and you could see it on the big play that he did make, not outrunning the secondary unlike he did last year. That showed full well how injured he really is. He did not have an extra gear.
He doesn't have an extra gear. He's done nothing special teams. I'm a person that believes if you're playing 50%, don't play.
Well, his 75% or whatever it is still fast enough to be on the field.
It's still fast, but we don't know what the injury is.
Right.
So if it is something that is causing him to either be a little bit tad slower or if it's causing him to not be able to cut, we don't know that. So if it's not helping the team, then we might have to look at taking a break from him.
Right.
We're not using him as much. Maybe that's where you plug in a Jordan Whitehead. I think that he's going to calm down the secondary. The secondary really hasn't been that much of a problem. I would like to see him and Damar Hamlin. Dennis Briggs, he's been okay. Bryson Gardner, I would like to continue seeing him. Him and Damar Hamlin have worked good in tandem last week in the second half. Bryson Gardner, I think he was just too young to be playing against Oklahoma State. I think that Jordan Whitehead can supplement. But you expect big things from. I mean, Jordan Whitehead might be the best player that we do have.
I think he's the best player on.
I think
on
that Narduzzi went to Danucci last week for a spark. Maybe he's pulling out as this is his spark this week. You got a guy that's fresh, and when you sat there and say before, we don't know what we're going to get out of him. You know what you're going to get out of it, Jordan Whitehead.
Absolutely. Yep.
He was moved to kind of free safety, strong safety to be added that extra run stopper. That's the one thing that I'm worried about this week. You don't know what you're going to get out of this team as far as stopping this opposition. You're missing a guy like Juan Price. You're mixing a guy like Tyreek Jarrett, who is a big component. And you know what? The one that no one ever remembers, Matt Columbus was the captain of that defense and got those guys in position. And it's just a totally different game. Last week you had run, and this week you have, or last week you had pass, and now you got all run.
And there was always somebody in the middle to catch. They were never getting, well, not never, but they were rarely getting to that second level.
Definitely.
And that's just not happening. All right, let's dial it back and say we got to run a prediction for tomorrow's game.
What are your 3 keys? We'll get that 3 keys and then a prediction.
3 keys: quarterback play. Pitt's got to get more. They got to get at least one of those guys going for that game. 2, I'm going to say run control. I'm not worrying about the secondary. And 3, they got to get a big play on special teams. I know those are simple, but guess what? Those are 3 things to me that absolutely have to happen in order for this team to be successful, because those are the things coming into this year that they were known for.
I agree with that. I think my 3 keys, I'd have to say, one is obviously one of the quarterbacks, no matter who it is, got to get this established. They got to get one of these guys going. This can't be a topic for the rest of the season.
Nope.
One of these guys got to get going, whether it's Brown or Danucci. One's got to get going. One's got to play a solid game from start to finish. Second one, defense got to key on this option. They have to be able to stop the run, but you also got to watch the big play.
I'll give up the big play. I'll give up a big play or 2. They got to stop.
They got to. I agree with you, but they have to be alert of it.
Yep.
Because what's going to happen with this quarterback is all of a sudden it's going to be run. They're going to lull you to sleep, and all of a sudden they're going to throw it over the top to some receiver that has 4 catches on the year.
Right.
And he's going to make his year out of this.
Jalen McCleskey.
Yeah. And then my third one is, I agree with you. I think that they need to get some sort of special teams going. I would say special teams big play by Quadri Henderson or something else on special teams. But I would say my heart says a Quadri Henderson. It doesn't even need to be a return for a touchdown. It just needs to be a long return.
Well, he had one last week and it got called back on it.
And start building something.
Right.
And my slash to that is Quadri Olson. If he's the guy,
stick with it.
Got to get going, man.
Right.
He's got to get going. So those are my 3 keys of the game. Prediction time. What do you got?
Pitt's a 9.5-point dog in this game.
Which I'm very, very, very surprised by.
I'm not surprised about it. Not after last week.
I don't see enough of Georgia Tech. I would, if you would have told me 6.5, I would have said fine.
Their 13.5 games, or their 13.5 or 13 days of sitting around is not going to help them at all. This is a team that's built around offense. They need to have that fluidity of playing every single week and playing often. You got a new quarterback, a guy new to the system. I'm going to be a homer, and I'm going to say Pitt wins this game 31-24. Though I will say this, I say 31. I don't know how they get there, but I think there's going to be several field goals, and I think the kid's going to kick well on the road. He kicks way better on the road than he does at home.
Isn't that the truth?
I've not seen a kid so allergic to Heinz Field in my life. But he is still young, so I get that. But I think
a bunch of empty yellow seats confuse him with the goalpost.
Well, in that section, in that open end that he keeps getting stuck kicking in that open end, they're great. But go ahead.
This is tough for me. I really want to be a homer here.
Go the other way.
I'm not. I think Pitt has their number.
I think Pitt's better.
Like I said
think they're a
before,
better
I think
team.
9.5 point dog is just
It's
ludicrous.
too much.
I think it's too much. I'm not I don't get betting, to be honest. I don't go that way. I predict games. I've seen this story too many times recently with Pitt, Georgia Tech. Every time they play, it's a close game. No one ever wins by more than a touchdown. Even the year 3 years ago when it opened up, Pitt had they fumbled 5 times. They couldn't hold on to a ball to hold their life, and they got back into it.
Yep.
I'm saying 30. I'm saying it's going to be close. It's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be some wacky score. I don't know, like you said, I don't know how Pitt's going to get to the points they get. I don't know how Georgia Tech gets the points they get, obviously running. It's going to be like 34, 31. You know what? 34-33. Alex Kessman's going to hit it, nail it at the end. And I don't think it's going to be as the buzzer goes. But what I do see is 50 seconds left.
Yep.
Pitt's going to give them the ball back with a weird amount of time, just enough. College, the clock stops after a first down. So I see them kicking it with 50 seconds left. Georgia Tech gets the ball back. I could even see them driving down the field and missing a field goal.
Right.
Because every time they play, it comes down to a field goal. So I do. 34-33. They win. Gets them a little bit. I think Max Brown has a great game. I think he does play a factor. I think both quarterbacks play a factor into the game some way or another, whether it's one plays bad, one plays
Good or
great.
bad.
Yeah, and I think that they somehow get on sync. I've seen the story. Narduzzi, I have faith in him stopping this option. He seems that he's okay, except for Navy. Can't stop Navy, but he can stop Georgia Tech.
That Navy team last year was really good. In his defense, that
Keenan
Navy
Reynolds
team,
was a very good.
He's an extremely good player.
And I think we do see my guy that we haven't talked about, and I know we just talked about him, but one player that we haven't talked about, Jordan Whitehead, is going to be out for blood. He's going to be PO'd that he was suspended for the first 3 games.
And
missed
he's
2 of
feeling
the
it.
biggest 2 games on the schedule. He's going to come back. He's either going to have a fumble recovery, he's going to have a touchdown on offense, or he's going to have an interception or a fumble on defense.
I agree with you.
He plays into the game, helps Pitt.
I agree with you. That's a good choice.
I just want to come back here next week and feel good about something. This is the second show, and all we've been is downers.
We'll pick it up.
I mean, we're sitting here. The only thing that we feel good about is the stuff that we're drinking here.
Great transition.
I mean, seriously.
Great transition. That is a fantastic.
We're either drinking because we need to feel good about ourselves, or we're drinking in our
I
sorrows.
totally agree with you. And this week we were once again in the Concord Grape. We were going to try something new. The new stuff hasn't come till next week.
We did try last week the pear.
Oh yeah, we did try the pear.
The pear, they ran out tonight. That's why
Yes.
we had to go back to the Concord Grape.
There
I
you
did
go.
ask for it whenever we went up there.
Okay.
To the bar. I did ask for the pear. Really tried that last week, a little sample of it.
Yep.
It was good. Wanted it this week, but it must be a top seller. They are out of it. So we had to resort to the Old Faithful, just like Pitt's going to do this week with the kicker. They're out the Old Faithful and the kicker.
Speaking of Old Faithful and the kicker, in one of these upcoming weeks, we have to talk about, section out about 5 minutes at a time about the best college football names of all time.
And the best helmets.
And the best helmet. Because I'm sorry, Chris Blewett is great.
For a
Tragically great name.
For a kicker.
And we should do a show. We should do a segment based around that. Anyways,
What we should do is, you know what? Think about it. We're going to do the 5 best college football helmets, the 5 best college football environments, and the 5 best college football names of all time.
I love it.
You could do past or present.
I love it.
You could go funny. You could go ironic.
Absolutely.
Or you could go just, that's a good football name.
I would throw in the top 5 best uniforms, but we already know what the best uniform is.
We could do that too.
Script
No,
fit.
we got 4. We got 4. We'll run through it either next week or the week after. You got uniforms, helmets, names, and environments.
All right.
Remember it.
Tune in next week. We got uniforms, names, helmets, and environments. And I guarantee you Pitt will be part of 3 of those.
It's not as homers.
4. That's right. Once again, we want to thank our sponsor, Arsenal Cider House. It's a great location. It's a great venue. They are still busy. It is nearly 8 o'clock in the evening. They close at 8. Trax Farm is nearly closed, and the bar is packed. You need to come down here. You need to come down and try out some new stuff. They have 2 brand new wine and ciders coming out next week. So if you don't have an opportunity, please do. Come out next week. Enjoy the show.
We got to get here early so it doesn't sell out.
I'm telling you, maybe our show starts at 4 and we run all 180 minutes. The last 20 minutes will be the most fun, I guarantee.
The Concord grape, though, I've only tried a few of these so far. Obviously, we got a long season to go.
Yes.
We got more tasting, more drinking to do. I do think that this is one of the better wine ciders that I have.
Right.
We didn't get a milkshake sorbet this time yet from the magic sorbet machine. That might be after the show's over.
I think so.
But this stuff is good. This cool environment. My family was out last week. Wanted to get some more people out here. This place is lively. We got to get more people out here.
We have friends coming in from out of town next week, so we will have a packed house out here next week to do the show. So if you don't get a chance, if you haven't had a chance yet, come on out. We've got we've got a full house tonight. So thanks again.
Come say hi to us.
Come say hi to us. Maybe we'll buy you a drink. Once again, my name's Jason. For Zach Kaminsky, we thank you for tuning in. Catch us next week when hopefully we're talking about a Pitt win.
We'll be talking about a Pitt win, Jason. I promise you that.
He said promise.
I promise it.
He said
I'm
promise.
not going to go back on my promise. But I do think it's going to be a nail biter and one that you're going to remember, but you're also going to remember because it was good, but also sitting on the edge of your sofa.
Okay. I can deal with that. All right. Everybody, we'll see you next week. Have a great week.
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.